welcome everyone to another wonderful Sunday. I put the names of readers in chat. We're starting with Rene and Arastu and Robin. Thanks to Mark and Gianni for putting together devotions. This is what we are starting with today. So here we go. This is opening prayer. So there you go, Rene and Arastu, please.
O thou compassionate Lord, thou who art generous and able, we are servants of thine, sheltered beneath thy providence. Cast thy glance of favor upon us. Give light to our eyes, hearing and understanding and love to our hearts. Render our souls joyous and happy through thy glad tidings. O Lord, point out to us the pathway of thy kingdom and resuscitate all of us through the breaths of the Holy Spirit. Bestow upon us life everlasting and confer upon us never-ending honor. Unify mankind and illumine the world of humanity. May we all follow thy pathway, long for thy good pleasure, and seek the mysteries of thy kingdom. O God, unite us and connect our hearts with thy indissoluble bond. Verily, thou art the giver, thou art the kind one, and thou art the Almighty.
That one indeed is a man who today dedicateth himself to the service of the entire human race. The great being saith, blessed and happy is he that ariseth to promote the best interests of the peoples and kindreds of the earth. In another passage, he hath proclaimed, it is not for him to pride himself who loveth his own country, but rather for him who loveth the whole world. The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizen. Baha'u'llah.
The unity which is productive of unlimited results is first a unity of mankind, which recognizes that all are sheltered beneath the overshadowing glory of the All-Glorious, that all are servants of one God, for all breathe the same atmosphere, for live upon the same earth and move beneath the same heavens, receive effulgence from the same sun, and are under the protection of one God. This is the most great unity, and its results are lasting if humanity adheres to it. But mankind has hitherto violated it, adhering to sectarian or other limited unities, such as racial, patriotic, or unity of self-interests. Therefore, no great results have been forthcoming.
Nevertheless, it is certain that the radiance and favors of God are encompassing. Minds have developed, perceptions have become acute, sciences and arts are widespread, and capacity exists for the proclamation and promulgation of the real and ultimate unity of mankind, which will bring forth marvelous results. It will reconcile all religions, make warring nations loving, cause hostile kings to become friendly, and bring peace and happiness to the human world. It will cement together the Orient and Occident, remove forever the foundations of war, and upraise the ensign of the most great peace. These limited unities are, therefore, signs of that great unity, which will make all the human family one by being productive of the attractions of conscience in mankind.
Know ye not why we created you all from the same dust? That no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how ye were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O concourse of light. Heed ye this counsel, that you may obtain the fruit of holiness from the tree of wondrous glory.
Oh, children of men. Oh, children of men. Know ye not why we created you all from the same dust? That no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how you were created. Since we have created you all from one substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O concourse of light. Heed ye this counsel, that ye may obtain the fruit of honey from the tree of wondrous glory. Know ye not why we created you all from the same dust? That no one should exalt himself over the other. Oh, children of men. Oh, children of men. Baha'is. Oh.
O Son of Man, if thine eyes be turned towards mercy, forsake the things that profit thee, and cleave unto that which will profit mankind. And if thine eyes be turned towards justice, choose thou for the neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself. Humility exalted man to the heaven of the glory and power, while as pride abateth him to the depths of wretchedness and degradation. Tablet of Baha'u'llah. The second attribute of perfection is justice and impartiality. This means to have no regard for one's own personal benefits and selfish advantages. It means to consider the welfare of the community as one's own. It means, in brief, to regard humanity as a single individual and one's own self as a member of that corporeal form, and to know of the certainty that if pain or injury afflicts any member of that body, it must be inevitably result in suffering for all the rest. Abdu'l-Baha, The Secret of Divine Living.
We ask God to endow human souls with justice so that they may be fair and may strive to provide for the comfort of all, that each member of humanity may pass his life in the utmost comfort and welfare. Then this material world will become the very paradise of the kingdom. This elemental earth will be in a heavenly state, and all the servants of God will live in the utmost joy, happiness, and gladness. We must all strive and concentrate all our thoughts in order that such happiness may accrue to the world of humanity. O children of dust, tell the rich of the midnight sighing of the poor, lest heedlessness lead them into the path of destruction and deprive them of the tree of wealth. To give and to be generous are attributes of mine. Well is it with him that adorneth himself with my virtues.
What a power is love. It's the most wonderful, the greatest of all living powers is love. Love gives life to the lifeless. Love lights a flame in the heart that is cold. Love gives hope to the hopeless and gladdens the heart of the sorrowful. In the world of existence there is indeed no greater power than hopeless and gladdens the heart of the sorrowful.
O thou provider, the dearest wish of this servant of thy threshold is to behold the friends of East and West in close embrace, to see all the members of human society gathered with love in a single great assemblage, even as individual drops of water collected in one mighty sea, to behold them all as birds in one garden of roses, as pearls of one ocean, as leaves of one tree, as rays of one sun. Thou art the mighty, the powerful, and thou art the God of strength, the omnipotent, the all-seeing.
Linda Lee, are you there?
Yes. No matter how far the material world advances, it cannot establish the happiness of mankind. Only when material and spiritual civilization are linked and coordinated will happiness be assured.
Bless you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to say a prayer? Now is the time. You can unmute yourself and say a prayer.
O Lord, unto thee I repair for refuge. Toward all thy signs I set my heart. O Lord, whether in traveling or at my home, in my occupation or at my work, I place my whole trust in thee. Grant me then thy sufficing help so as to make me independent of all things else, O thou who art unsurpassed in thy mercy. Bestow upon me my portion, O my God, as thou pleasest, and cause me to be satisfied with whatsoever thou hast ordained for me. Thine is the absolute authority to command the path.
I'd like to say a prayer for the children. Oh my God, thou seest these children who are the twigs of the tree of life, the birds of the meads of the salvation, the pearls of the ocean of thy grace, the roses of the garden of thy gardens. O God, our Lord, we sing thy praise, bear witness to thy sanctity, and implore fervently the heaven of thy mercy to make us lights of guidance, stars shining above the horizon of eternal glory amongst mankind, and to teach us a knowledge which proceedeth from thee. Ya Baha'u'l-Baha.
This is a recently translated prayer from Baha'u'llah. Praise be to thee, O Lord my God, for guiding me into the horizon of thy revelation, and for causing me to be mentioned by thy name. I beseech thee, by the spreading rays of the day star of thy providence, and by the billowing waves of the ocean of thy mercy, to grant that my speech may bear a trace of the influence of thine own exalted word, attracting thereby the realities of all created things. Powerful art thou to do what thou willest, through thy wondrous, incomparable utterance. Baha'u'llah.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for participating in our wonderful devotions. It was very nice. It's nice to see everyone. I even saw somebody's cat make an appearance during the devotions, which I always appreciate. In fact, I can still see Jane's cat right there peeking in. Love that. That's one of my favorite things about this. Look at that fluffy tail. Okay, so we have a special treat this morning. We have a local author. And I say local, she's recently local. She has relocated here from my neck of the woods where I grew up in upstate New York, although she is a Buckeye by birth, right, Drew? You are from, yep, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Indiana, a Hoosier.
Indiana. Nice, nice. Okay, so this is a little thing that people don't know about Drew. Drew is one of the few Baha'is that knew me long before I was a Baha'i. So I went to Baha'i activities at her house when I was a child in upstate New York in Poughkeepsie with her son Aaron, who were almost the exact same age. And so I've actually she's known me for a long time. In fact, probably the second longest of any Baha'i out there, actually, of anyone that I interact with. So it is always nice to have her. As many of you know, Drew has recently written a book, The Story of Baha'u'llah, which received great praise from Rainn Wilson on our fireside a couple months ago, who said he loved her book. I admit I have not read it yet. I admit it's on my bookshelf and it's on my list. I really want to read it because I've only heard good things about it.
Well, now you can get it as an audio book, it just comes out as audio. So for those of you who like that version.
Nice, excellent. So it's available as an audio book. Excellent, fantastic. And she's working on a book on Abdu'l-Baha right now, which you're shooting for, was it April you said, or May?
Well, we're hoping to get it done so that it can come out late in the anniversary year, but if it doesn't come out then, it will come out the next year. So we're just working towards that.
Nice. Now, if anyone has known an author or had an author in their life who was published, they know how difficult and challenging it can be, this whole process. So it is amazing that Drew has worked on these two important projects. They're very accessible. I know Story of Baha'u'llah is very accessible for a lot of people, and it really introduces people to Baha'u'llah, which is very important. So that's why we're excited for this book about Abdu'l-Baha. And so with that, I would like to let Drew take over. Now, Drew, are you going to share the PowerPoint today?
Yes, I am. And God willing, let's see. I am going to, hold on just a second. Oh, where'd it go? Okay, so I'm going to share screen and then, here we go. And I'm going to, okay, so we're good now, right? You can see that? Whoops. Can you see that?
We can see it.
Okay, good. So, actually, I'm going to start with the briefest of introductions for anybody who needs to know, where does Abdu'l-Baha fit into the Baha'i faith? Baha'is believe that in the course of human history, there have been a succession of divine educators or manifestations of God, and that in the mid-19th century, God summoned Baha'u'llah to reveal a new revelation to humanity. And that revelation lasted over 4 decades. Baha'u'llah, in his writings, instructed the Baha'is to turn to his eldest son, Abdu'l-Baha, as the head of the faith. And he designated Abdu'l-Baha as the authorized interpreter of his writings and the perfect exemplar of the Baha'is' spirit and teachings, of the Baha'i faith, spirit and teachings. And then in his life and writings, Abdu'l-Baha offered a vivid demonstration of Baha'u'llah's teachings and action. So what I'm sharing with you this morning is, people think you need to be an expert to write a book, but actually, for many of us, it's a process of discovering things that we didn't know when we started out. And this is the case with Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah's teachings about wealth and poverty and divine policy. I found it really interesting as I was writing this and looking into this to see how the dots were connected and how Abdu'l-Baha really enlarged our understanding about what this means applied in different situations. Since we're directed to look at Abdu'l-Baha as an example, I'm going to start out by reading to you a story, a short narrative of Abdu'l-Baha. Now, some of you who are familiar with Abdu'l-Baha might recall the fact that every Friday morning he would give to the poor. They would come to his gate and he would organize them and walk among them and give them alms and money and listen to their requests for prayers and so on. He did it in a very caring and kindly way. But there was another way in which Abdu'l-Baha routinely gave to the poor. And this is the story I want to share with you this morning. Although dawn drew near, a river of stars still washed across the indigo sky. But already Abdu'l-Baha had left the comfort of a warm bed, breathing in the chill air of the early hour as he walked with purpose along the narrow streets of Akka. He routinely chose this time, between 4 and 6 in the morning, when the city was not yet astir, to visit particular families among Akka's poor. Before the first rays of sunlight visited their doorstep, Abdu'l-Baha would arrive, a familiar figure in his long abba, with white turban taj crowning his dark hair, now salted with gray. Those who opened their doors to him were not the poor who came openly every Friday to receive their alms from Abdu'l-Baha. These were the poor who had once been prosperous, who had felt secure in their positions, until a twist of fortune dropped them from those better days into the clutch of poverty. Too ashamed to ask for assistance, these were the families of Akka who suffered in silence. That they were Muslim, Jew, or Christian, Arab, or Turk mattered not to Abdu'l-Baha. He knew who they were, and with unerring understanding of their plight, came to them under cover of darkness, not as a stranger, but as a beneficent friend or a kind father caring for his family. In the eyes of Abdu'l-Baha, they were never the invisible poor. He knew their names and the names of their children, as well as their needs. If there was illness, he brought a remedy or provided for a doctor to visit. If a roof was in need of repair, he arranged for it. The warmth of his kindness melted any barriers of embarrassment, and those he visited soon found themselves unburdening the troubles that weighed them down, confiding their hopes and plans, seeking the sensible counsel of Abdu'l-Baha. In the early morning twilight, their homes came alight with Abdu'l-Baha's encouragement, his humor, his practical wisdom. And always before he left, he would ease their worries for the week ahead with a sum of money to help meet their needs. Then, reaching up to adjust the taj on his head, he would take his leave and with a buoyant stride disappear down the lane. In Akka, there was good reason that Abdu'l-Baha was known as father of the poor. For so many families, a visit from Abdu'l-Baha meant the difference between courage and despair. From visit to visit, it was the memory of Abdu'l-Baha and the lingering touch of his caring spirit which lifted their hearts and made them feel, despite their circumstances, God had not forgotten them. By sunrise, Abdu'l-Baha had returned home to join his own family for prayers and the beginning of the day. Breakfast was a little wheat bread and goat's milk cheese, with tea taken hot and sweet in small crystal glasses. Abdu'l-Baha understood the reversal of fortune, how home and the pleasures of ordinary days could vanish overnight. His own family had come from wealth and nobility, the descendants of kings and prophets. In Persia, his grandfather had been a respected minister of state of the ruling Shah. In the capital city of Tehran, where Abdu'l-Baha was born, his parents had spent their days and their wealth assisting the poor, often sharing their own table with those who were hungry. Who could know that overnight everything would change, that events would cause his father, Baha'u'llah, to be abruptly cast into the prison called Siyashal, the Black Pit, that mother and children would be forced to abandon their home, fleeing for their lives ahead of the plundering mob, that they would live in hiding for dangerous weeks and months before the fate of Baha'u'llah and their own was decided, that they who had fed the poor from their bounty would find their own meager resources dwindle to nothing but a little flour, which their mother gave to each of her 3 children, a scant handful apiece, to ease the pangs of hunger. His family's ordeal in Tehran would end with an order of exile. Abdu'l-Baha had been 9 years old when it began in 1853, the exile from their Persian homeland that would take them over the years from city to city in the far-flung Ottoman Empire, Baghdad, Constantinople, Adrianople, the exile that would bring them finally here to the shores of Palestine and the Mediterranean Sea, and the walled city of Akka, a crumbling outpost of the empire reserved for the worst criminals. Abdu'l-Baha had been 24 that August of 1868 when he passed through the city's massive sea gate and first set foot in Akka with his family and a handful of others. The prisoners were expected to perish and be forgotten, along with their cause and its followers. So I'm going to pause here for just a couple of minutes and ask if there's any comments or things that struck you about this story, about how Abdu'l-Baha related to the poor in this situation, or anything else about Abdu'l-Baha. Let's see. Chris, can you catch people?
I see Robin unmuted herself. Robin, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how amazing, for him to get up and go out and reach out to the people earlier than everyone else, to, because of their humility, or how, just to save them, the feelings that they might have about being so humiliated from having and then losing. So he went in the middle, early wee hours of the morning to interact with them and to give them that hope and that peace of not being forgotten by God. That's like so beautiful, and then to take on with all the things he had already on his plate all the time, to take on the requests and the needs of everyone here in this place that he was made a prisoner, right?
Yeah, and he did this routinely. Well, this is not just a one-off thing.
Right.
He did this routinely every week.
Man, so beautiful. And the way it was written, it just took me on a journey, I walked with them, and to get to see this picture of him while you were reading has just really pulled me into the whole image of it all and the feeling of it.
Thank you, Robin. Any other comments about how Abdu'l-Baha related to the poor here?
I have one. It brought to mind this particular passage from Abdu'l-Baha, where he said, "Be ye sincerely kind and not in appearance only. Let each one of God's loved ones center his attention on this, to be the Lord's mercy to men, to be the Lord's grace. Let him do some good to every person whose path he crosseth." And this for me just brings the story that you read, Drew, just brings that quotation just so fully home for me.
Yes.
So he's my example.
Exactly, yes. Anyone else?
I was also going to say I was impressed just thinking about what he went through in 1853 at 9 years old. Right, like I keep thinking about all the things our kids have to go through right now because of the pandemic and stuff. And you think 9 years old, how young is that? Like how just that kind of. I mean, he was sent across. He had to travel with his family across vast distances in a time in Iran and Iraq where travel was very difficult and dangerous. Actually, it was a dangerous time, and how that must have shaped his worldview and stuff, and affected how he interacted with others and had empathy for others.
Yes, I think that empathy, the fact that he experienced so much of what humanity in one way or in one place or another are experiencing, the loss of home and hunger and poverty and all of these things. So, and I think one of the things that strikes me about how Abdu'l-Baha relates to the poor is that he does not have an attitude of superiority. He converses with them. He carries on conversation to find out, what are their plans and what are their hopes, and and to support them in ways that he can support them. That approach, we have, if we look around in our culture and we look in ourselves and some of the attitudes that we have about why people are poor or why they are wealthy, that often carries judgment, and you see whenever Abdu'l-Baha is interacting with the poor, there is never judgment there. And I think that in itself is a huge example. Whether or not you get up at 4 a.m, there is still, the example of how he interacted. So let's move on. We talked a little bit about Abdu'l-Baha and the poor. I want to move on to his attitudes about wealth. And this passage, this is just a small passage that comes from The Secret of Divine Civilization, which in fact he wrote when he was a young man, just 31, at the request of Abdu'l-Baha. And it was a letter, an open letter sent to the Persian people and published anonymously. But here's what Abdu'l-Baha generally says about wealth. He doesn't disparage it, but he noted that its benefits depended on the conditions surrounding it. He calls it praiseworthy if it is acquired by an individual's efforts and the grace of God in commerce, agriculture, art, and industry, and if it be expended for philanthropic purposes. Above all, he wrote, if a judicious and resourceful individual should initiate measures which would universally enrich the masses of the people, there could be no undertaking greater than this, for such a benefactor would supply the needs and ensure the comfort and well-being of a great multitude. If, however, a few have inordinate riches, while the rest are impoverished, and no fruit or benefit accrues from that wealth, then it is only a liability to its possessor. So we're still talking here about the actions of the individual. And interestingly, there was a particular individual, Phoebe Hearst, who comes, we become aware of her in the first Western pilgrimage to visit Abdu'l-Baha. And Abdu'l-Baha, after this pilgrimage, this was in 1898 and 99, after this pilgrimage, Abdu'l-Baha writes and sends his greetings to America, and he sends his greetings through the person that he's writing to the honorable and spiritual women who had been on that pilgrimage, and particularly that one who has proved that it is possible for a camel to pass through a needle's eye. And what is he referring to? He's referring to this quote, this verse from the Bible. It's actually in more than one place, but you can find it in Mark. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. So he's referring to the fact that Phoebe Hearst, in the way that she was a wealthy woman, she was a widow, she inherited lots of money, but she was a generous and thoughtful philanthropist who did a lot of good with her money. She established free kindergartens for children of the poor, both white and black, which was the fact that they were interracial was really outstanding at that time. She set up a training program for the women to teach kindergarten, so that she always liked to support women. She established free libraries for workers in mining towns. Her husband had acquired his wealth through mining. And the interesting thing about those free libraries, which differed from some other people who also established free libraries, is that she made sure there were materials in the language of the newest immigrants in that town, so that they too had the opportunity to advance and to uplift themselves. She established scholarships for women to attend the University of California. And the university was not really well prepared to receive women. So she also did work to establish better living conditions for them at that university. She co-founded the National Congress of Mothers, or what later became the Parent Teachers Association. A friend wrote that she transformed lives, not alone by the power of her money, but by the deeper magic of her love, her sympathy, and her deep insight into the needs and aspirations of her fellow beings. She was also, as a Baha'i, well, she wasn't yet a Baha'i, but when that first pilgrimage, she was responsible for the first pilgrimage. She arranged it. She paid for the passage of every person in that pilgrimage except for one who was able to afford her passage. And Abdu'l-Baha told her that that one philanthropic deed was, in his eyes, the best of all her philanthropic deeds, and for that she would receive eternal reward. That was from Abdu'l-Baha to Phoebe Hearst. But you can see that she definitely fit into this passage that he was writing about. How does one deal with, he never says, Abdu'l-Baha never says that wealth is a bad thing. You know, I grew up, I have to say, I date myself, but I was in the hippie culture back in the day. I mean, that was around me. And, you know, there were definite, and also from religious backgrounds, there are definite ideas in our culture that to be poor is a good thing. And there are opposite ideas that if you are wealthy, you are good, and if you are poor, you are bad. You know, that this is a judgment. So, so it's a really important reason for us to really look at what does Abdu'l-Baha say? What does Baha'u'llah say about these things? And then I came across this very interesting and rather lengthy talk that Abdu'l-Baha gave in Montreal. This was at a time when he was, 1908, he was freed as a political prisoner. And later in 1912, he made an extensive journey throughout America, a 9-month journey. And he gave hundreds, he was invited by churches and organizations. He gave hundreds of talks to hundreds of thousands of people who were not, you know, he spoke to the Baha'is, but he spoke to thousands of people who were not Baha'is. So this particular talk in Montreal, he gave in September of 1912, and he was addressing a group of socialists and labor leaders. They, of course, were very interested in what is going on in society. So this is where Abdu'l-Baha takes things to a different level. Now, he talks about, you know, Abdu'l-Baha in his personal life had treated the people around him as though they were members of his family. Now he's talking about this larger concept which Baha'u'llah taught. In reality, all mankind represents one family. God has created all as one. Is it possible for one member or part to be in distress and the other members to be at ease? Is it possible for one member of a family to be subjected to the utmost misery and to abject poverty, and for the rest of the family to be comfortable? It is impossible, unless those members of the family be senseless, atrophied, inhospitable, unkind. Then they would say, though these members do belong to our family, let them alone. Let us look after ourselves. Let them die. So long as I am comfortable, I am honored, I am happy. This, my brother, let him die. If he be in misery, let him remain in misery. If he is hungry, let him remain so. If he is without clothes, so long as I am clothed, let him remain as he is. If he is shelterless, homeless, so long as I have a home, let him remain in the wilderness. Such utter indifference in the human family is due to lack of control, to lack of a working law, to lack of kindness in its midst. So I was rather shocked when I first read this, but it's actually Abdu'l-Baha unpacking what we are actually saying in our society when we are not taking care of the people all around us. If there is anybody who is suffering in any of these ways. And then he links this lack of kindness, he enlarges our understanding, and he links this lack of kindness to lack of a working law. So here he's speaking to the responsibilities of society. It's not simply the individual, but there are society responsibilities as well. And he says, although the body politic is one family, this household is not well arranged. This household is not living under a perfect law. All the laws which are legislated do not ensure happiness. They do not provide comfort. Therefore, a law must be given to this family, by means of which all the members of this family will enjoy equal well-being and happiness. Baha'u'llah, he goes on to say, has given teachings and instructions with regard to every one of the problems with which man struggles. And then he speaks to the question of economics. Now, I'm not going to go into the details here. You can, if you visit the Baha'i Reference Library online and go to number 102, which is his speech in Montreal, one of his speeches, you can see what he outlines. He talks about every village needing to have a storehouse, and that he outlines various revenues in which things would be put into the storehouse, and various ways in which people could draw out from the storehouse. And interestingly, he starts and he said, and the most important person in this is the farmer. And then he expands that to the farmer and the peasant class are the key things to consider in this. And he never says here, that all must live at the same level. He acknowledges that there will be difference of degrees. There will be people who will be poorer and people who will be more wealthy. He never says that is wrong. What he's saying that it is wrong that anyone is living in abject poverty. That everyone should live comfortably, and then there can always be more added on. And then he says this, we ask God to endow human souls with justice so that they may be fair and may strive to provide for the comfort of all. Then this material world will become the very paradise of the kingdom. We must all strive and concentrate all our thoughts in order that such happiness may accrue to the world of humanity. So so this is relating, it's not just a nice thing to give to the poor. It is not just a social responsibility. It is also a matter of justice. And this is a key concept in Baha'i teachings, that we need to establish justice in every realm of human interaction. And then I found that just a short passage that I want to share that really emphasizes why we listen to what Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha say to us. And this has to do with a little bit earlier, before that September talk, and this is a May 1st talk. He was in Chicago. He was there to dedicate the Baha'i House of Worship, but he spoke to various other groups and organizations. And this was the first talk that he gave there, and he spoke to over 1,000 people. And he's talking about that that this house of worship is going to bring together people from all races and backgrounds and persuasions. And, you know, I will say as a precursor to this, Abdu'l-Baha in 1912 in the US, he was in the US during an election year. He never spoke and said anything about the election or anything that was being discussed in the election. But interestingly, he did speak about more than once about divine policy. And he says this: the divine policy is the oneness of humanity. God is just and kind to all. He excludes none, and his judgments are correct and true. No matter how complete human policy and foresight may appear, they are imperfect. If we do not seek the counsel of God, or if we refuse to follow his dictates, it is presumptive evidence that we are knowing and wise, whereas God is ignorant, that we are sagacious and God is not. God forbid. No matter how far the human intelligence may advance, it is still but a drop, while divine omniscience is the ocean. Shall we say that a drop is imbued or endowed with qualities of which the ocean is devoid? Shall we believe that the policy and plan of this atom of a human soul are superior to the wisdom of the omniscient? There is no greater ignorance than this. And then to conclude, I just want to bring this up to the present day and the fact that these really important concepts and approaches that Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah taught are being discussed at every level in the social discourses of every level of humankind today, including the international level. And this is just a highlight of one of those meetings. It was a Peace Week back in November of 2020, and it was attended by the Baha'i international community, academics, civil society actors, representatives of UN agencies and international organizations, and it was a forum for the exchange of ideas. And interestingly, over time, in these kinds of forums, the people who are not Baha'is are drawing closer and closer to acknowledging and accepting the kinds of concepts that the Baha'is are putting forward. So just a couple of these is Baha'i international community is saying that the machinery of international politics and power has to be directed completely more toward cooperation and unity, that we need to see each other as part of the same human family. And interestingly, the executive director of this forum was pointing out that all of a sudden governments are realizing that they have been allocating resources in inefficient ways, and that the need now more and more is to redefine security in terms of social and economic welfare, that is the well-being of the citizens of any country, rather than to think strictly in militaristic terms. And there is the most recent statement that came out this autumn, in which has in it the Baha'i approach to these things, is a governance befitting. You can go to news.baha'i.org and just in the search box, look for a governance befitting, and you can find that and open up that, read what's in it. So with that, I will conclude what I have to say and see what the rest of you would like to comment upon about this. So shall I stop sharing here? Yes. Okay. So perhaps we can And others would like to unmute. So what do you think, everyone? What particularly strikes you about these concepts? And is any of this new to you, or were you familiar with this?
Well, not exactly new, but I think it illuminates more, look, sort of his, his humble and generous approach. For when there's people who, may have, had it grand before and they've fallen down. He handles it in with so much grace. The other thing that it always strikes me is, there is a place in the writings where Baha'u'llah tells us to not give to beggars, and that sometimes has, gives, it can give someone sort of the reinforcement of, oh yeah, I don't need to worry about the poor. It's like, that's a different thing altogether. Abdu'l-Baha gave to the poor. He thought of the poor well before they would even get to the point of having to beg, I guess is the point, right? So if we can, have our, like reorient our thoughts in that direction, it's like, how can we help people so they don't get to this point of desperation, right? So,
Plus, someone did ask him about this when he was in America, and should they give, and he said, well, yes, otherwise they're no better off for you. The poor are no better off if you don't give to them. And he told the Baha'is themselves to organize around giving to the poor. And many communities who had, whatever their resources were and what the needs were, would do that around they had specific projects and stuff. And they might be very modest things, but still they would do something. Who else is wanting to? Pat, did you want to say something?
Yes. First of all, Drew, thanks for a wonderful presentation. So timely, I think. And you have a real knack for pulling these particular episodes. I had a couple of things rolling through my mind, and one of them was when you said that in that year that he was here in the States in 1912, and that he just didn't mention the politics, and that deserves just a moment, because I know that that 1912 was pretty much the heyday. That was the high water mark of the progressive movement. And the election of 1912 was Taft and this erudite Princeton president, Woodrow Wilson, and then Teddy Roosevelt saying that no, none of them were progressive enough. And I think it is remarkable. It's not just that it was some other election. It was a time in which it would have been so easy for Abdu'l-Baha to have picked one or two particular things like child labor or something like that. But he, as you point out, he didn't. He didn't. It would have been so easy to tie some Baha'i principle to one of the many current and of those times. Really, hey, who's not going to get behind that? And he didn't. And what a tremendous example for us, and an example of that kind of discipline and focus. 1912, different year.
I love what you just said. And I think that that's the thing, not getting drawn in to the kinds of conversations that people are having because of what their reality is, and instead keep presenting the Baha'u'llah's teachings, keep presenting the goal of the future, you know, what's coming. And so to keep pulling people out of the place that they're at and not even dwell in it at all. You know, I think that's the beauty of all that as well. Not easy always, but definitely the goal.
Now, someone was asking about where did Abdu'l-Baha get his funds? Well, you know, he did get a certain amount that was given to prisoners because he was a prisoner in that city, so from the government. And also Baha'is sent money, you know, sent funds. I don't know if Hukuk was, it may have been operational at this time among the Persians. So yes, he did have sources, and I should mention that he and his family lived very modestly. You know, seriously, he was always sort of irritating the women in his family because he'd be giving away his cloaks, you know, and so they would get him a new one, he would give away his clothes. So, I mean, they really lived very simply, and so that they had the resources to give to others in various ways.
Always the core of these things, the emphasis is, I think, what Nabil was talking about. The heart of the matter is looking toward the, what am I trying to say here? It is one thing to give when giving, you know, when money will help alleviate some suffering. It's another thing to look at the source of the suffering, in which in so many cases is the inequities within a society. And it is, like you were saying, it's the divine policy.
Yes, and I think, you know, we, during this pandemic season, when issues about race came up and various other things, you know, we keep being led back to the issue of justice. And it's very clear that, you know, this whole business about poverty and wealth is not laid exclusively at the door of individuals. It is clearly something that societies must take on and address. And there's such a wide range of ways in which that needs to be done. We can't even begin here. But, you know, this is something that's has to be tackled over time. But I think it also helps us to see that if the society itself is not just in how we handle poverty and wealth, then we can hardly be blaming individuals who are lacking, you know, who are poor. And you know, honestly, when I was reading about Abdu'l-Baha visiting these people, again, I was, this pandemic has just comes to the forefront. You know, how many people are seeing their livelihoods disappear, you know, in front of them as they go through this. And that's just here in this country. That's not even to say about, seriously, the larger family of man is throughout the globe. And, you know, we can't even begin to go to all of the places in which people are suffering and lacking the very most basic things. And that, you know, we can't just sit in our corner of the world and say, well, too bad for them, you know. And yet it's also not something that just we as particular individuals can take care of. This is a larger issue of social justice that needs to be addressed. But these are also conversations that we can have with others, you know, about the sort of the different levels that enlarge the understanding about where these issues are, what these issues are related to.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? This is John Michael. I'm a guest of GG's.
Hello, welcome.
I have found something very puzzling about the politics side of the faith, where we are, from my understanding, that we should stay out of. And I find it kind of hard walking hand in hand with helping the world without it becoming political?
Well, yes, that's a big question. And would someone like to respond to that? Who feels like comfortable talking to that?
I would like to respond to that.
Laura?
I know it seems that way, and lots of people put their faith in politics for changing the world, but I think for Baha'is, it's one step back from that. It's that in order for politics to be effective, politicians have to have their heart in the right place and have to understand the issues and want to change them. And so our principles of the unity of mankind and the equality of men and women are really what needs to sort of, seep deeper into the minds of the people of the world. And when that happens, of course, it will also become a part of what politicians look at. So that's kind of my...
So it's okay for a politician to become, like a senator to become a Baha'i, or he can't hold that job anymore, or is it okay?
Once it becomes partisan, he can't hold that job anymore.
I actually don't know if that case has come up. I don't know that would be something the Baha'i institutions would have to weigh in on.
Right. Oh, okay. Because it seemed like we would have to infiltrate the government by being Baha'is to change the government, to think the way that we would like. It would seem like we would need to be involved with them to help. Like a flame, like how they say a moth to a flame, watching one senator with the Baha'i faith and the way he feel, he can pull in others and more and more and more. But by staying out, no one will ever feel that flame or see the joy of being a Baha'i and what we stand for if there's no one in there to show example of.
So, that's a little bit different. There's sort of a few different questions, I think, happening here. This is Aaron Cederquist, by the way. So at an individual level, Baha'is are not supposed to be involved in partisan political issues. We're also supposed to enjoin to engage in social action, in the betterment of our community, things like that. And obviously we live at a time where even things that are fundamental principles of the faith, like, unity and diversity, the elimination of racial prejudice, things like that, are actually political issues as well. And so there is a degree of, obviously we can't not be engaged in such discourse and things, but we have to be careful about how we do so. Then there's a question of sort of the Baha'i community as a whole, and Shoghi Effendi has talked about different stages that go through. And so political non-involvement is something that applies to individuals. It applies right now as well to institutions, at least at the local and generally at the national level. But the Baha'i community will evolve through several stages. Shoghi Effendi talks about there being the point of the Baha'i faith being like the official religion of a country, or the point of a Baha'i state, and then ultimately, Baha'i World Commonwealth. And so obviously, as we transition through those stages, things will change. And Abdu'l-Baha actually, during his own lifetime, had asked a couple of the hands of the cause to, as Iran was undergoing a transition from a monarchy to a constitutional government, or at least was attempting to. I don't quite remember how that actually went. He asked a couple of the hands of the cause, to get to basically become eligible, whatever the process was, for congressional seats, or whatever the body was, the lawmaking legislative body. And so that process was started, or at least he looked into it, and then at a certain point told them to pull back because it had become too, the whole process had become too rancorous and partisan. So we can see even from Abdu'l-Baha's time, I mean, this is, that there is this will be an evolution that we will undergo at some point, but how it will happen and when it will happen is going to be under the guidance of the Universal House of Justice. I mean, at this point, we still have a lot of work just transforming the grassroots of the communities we're in, so that people can even begin to think about electing leaders based on qualities of character and with a certain minimum level, let's say, of a sense of responsibility and justice and things like that, let alone to the point the Baha'i teachings don't really talk about the transformation of the world as being a top-down process as much as being a bottom-up one. So that's sort of where a lot of our focus is.
About the top-down, there is a certain power there, because interestingly, a lot of the things that have moved forward at an international level have been through nonprofit groups, groups outside of the political agency of the politics of the United Nations, for example. They might still be UN connected, or they might be nonprofit groups like Doctors Without Borders or various other things that that are working together and establishing ways of working together across national boundaries, and ways of, and there are forums, for example, and I mentioned this Peace Week as one forum, or there have been forums in Europe where I don't know if the governments were involved, but this was mainly non-governmental actors coming together and discussing issues of immigration. There was a range of issues around that, and dealing with poverty and social welfare around those things. So these things are happening on both at the international level, and the same thing is happening in our communities locally and nationally, where groups are coming together to deal with and have forums and discussions and take actions around these things. And I have to say that at this point, that holds out the most hope, because when we start, without going into much detail, there are issues in the politics, whether you're talking Congress and so on. There is just so much corruption around money and stuff involved that it's really not, it's not so good to be involved with that. It doesn't go in places where you want to go. But there are ways to actually become socially active without necessarily becoming politically involved. Does that I don't know, does Aaron and Mike, does that answer any of your questions, sir?
Oh yes, it gives me a good area to go to look into more. Thank you. It just sounded, just comparing with wealth and helping people,
Right.
It was just a thought in my head.
Yeah, of course.
Always bothered me.
Someone also posted in the chat for this group a message from the Universal House of Justice that would go into a bit more nuance and detail about this, and isn't, of course, then just the personal thoughts and opinions of individual Baha'is that,
of course,
may or may not be actually that accurate.
Thank you, Aaron. Yes.
Your thoughts are very accurate.
No, but it's true. We do turn to the Universal House of Justice, like we have to Abdu'l-Baha, to get us pointed in a good direction.
Yeah, we don't have unity through the alignment of personal opinion as much as through,
So,
well, I gotta get out of here. You guys, it was nice meeting you. Hopefully, I can join you guys again. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm a Baha'i.
Well, it's been great.
Oh, wonderful. What was your name again?
John Michael.
John Michael. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us.
You take care, everyone.
Please join us again.
All right, take care. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Gigi.
So anyone else with some thoughts around this?
Drew, I wanted to tell you there was a simple statement that that you said, just that they, exiled Abdu'l-Baha to close the faith, to somewhat banish the Baha'is and end the faith. And yet all this time later, I'm sitting in Marble Falls and I'm thinking about how much of my entire life involves the faith. And just, that's miraculous. I mean, you're telling the daily efforts that he made, but those daily efforts ended up impacting me all this time later and so many others. So I think that also helps to instill in me that the efforts that I make are needed.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I had one very quick thought. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. This is in a completely different realm, but maybe not. On the point of philanthropy, we know that the wealthy contribute, but I'm stunned at this woman, the former wife of Mr. Jeff Bezos, and she has these billions of dollars in her divorce settlement, and she is determined to give it all away. And I read about this and I thought, well, isn't that a cute sentiment? How nice, how what a wonderful public, how grandiose. And then I read about it. My God, she's, $5 billion here and a couple of $1 billion last month. The Central Texas Area Food Bank was a recipient of some tens of millions of dollars. And of course, she had a team working to, sort through the who and the how and the why. And what she has openly done, and she said it, she said, we have all this wealth in America. We have a handfuls of people, relatively, with tremendous wealth, and she's challenging them. She's saying, what more do you want? You should think about putting it into the public wheel. And astonishing and wonderful at the same time.
It is. And of course, one of the principles of the Baha'i faith is also universal participation. So even those of us who are not billionaires, even if we're not wealthy, in the least, we can give something, because it's something that universal participation has, a spirit of its own.
That's right. Absolutely.
We have this writing from Abdu'l-Baha: the continent of America is in the eyes of the one true God, the land wherein the splendors of his light shall be revealed, where the mysteries of his faith shall be unveiled, where the righteous will abide and the free assemble.
It's good we have that, because sometimes we get discouraged.
Yeah, it's easy to look at the stuff going on and get caught up in what's happening instead of realizing, and us folks especially that have been around and seen the changes and what's unfolding of Baha'u'llah's teachings in front of our face. We recognize it so easily. Oh, well, that's going to bring about this, and this is bringing about. So it's just beautiful to have these truths that are what we're aiming for, and what will become the reality. No matter if I'm not good enough and I don't step up and do it, someone is going to. This is in action. It's taking place. And, we can jump on that wagon and be a part of this amazing transformation, as difficult and as wonderful as it is.
Oh.
Or we can sit back, but someone will be raised up, take on this truth and make it happen.
And we can already see part of that fulfillment in, he talks about the continent of America, and we have to remember that's North and South America. And, the last quarter century of the plans of the Baha'i faith have centered around the training institutes, which have all, been using the materials of the Ruhi Institute, which itself was established in Colombia. and was established in Colombia during a long period of sort of low-level civil war. I mean, this is, it was really something born of adversity that's been showing the potential of faith to a degree that's not been seen before. So we have already seen some of that, and we'll surely see more.
And just the very fact of, shifting our gaze to what, particularly the Universal House of Justice helps us to do that, to see what is going on with the institute process, in our country and, in wherever in the world. And that this is really looking for the kind of development that is not political, may not yet, and we don't know where that's going to go. That in certain places that has contributed to governments having conversations around Baha'i teachings, and governments inviting the Baha'is in for education of the children and youth and so on. So, this is, we can't see the path, the exact path. We just have to have the faith and be on the path and make our contribution. So I think Chris, are we at that point where we need to say goodbye?
We are right at 12 p.m., but